I have a talk that's built and centered and focused on one word. It's a 7-letter word. It's a word that many of us obsess about. It's a word that many of us think about. It's a word that keeps us up at night. It's a word that we all want for our causes, for our community, for our career. We want it for our kids. It's a 7-letter word. A simple word, but a very complex and profound word at the same time. And it touches all aspects of our life. What I want to talk about for the next 15 or 20 minutes is the 7-letter word, success. I want to talk to you about your success for your career. I want to talk to you about your success in your cause, for your company, for your community, even for your country. So this 7-letter word, success, is associated with another 7-letter word. And that's what I'm going to spend a lot of my time on for the next 15 minutes or so, focused on. And that 7-letter word is passion. Passion. Now, as we heard this morning in a number of presentations, we heard that word passion used. And passion is an emotion. But I want to go beyond passion as an emotion and talk to you about a very specific idea. And the idea is built around a question. And here's the question. What is the world's most valuable asset? What is the world's most valuable asset that we can take to invest in our success? Success for our career, for our cause, for our company, for our country. What is the world's most valuable asset that we can take to invest, to ensure and sustain our success? So this is about success, and it's also about passion. So let me start with a quick story. Who remembers what they were doing on July 5th, 1991 at 11:30 in the morning? Unless it's your birthday, you probably don't have a clue, right? Does anybody remember what they were doing in 1991? Okay, July 5th, 1991, 11:30 in the morning. I was standing on the roof of the HMV store at 333 Yonge Street with my boyhood hero, Alice Cooper. And Alice Cooper was just about to go on the roof and play a 3-song set on the roof of the newly opened HMV store. I was the 33-year-old president of HMV, and as Alice was leaving me, where we were talking about golf, now Alice with his long hair, his devil makeup, he was talking about the 17th hole at Pebble Beach. He's a fabulous golfer. Actually, his story is amazing. Golf actually saved him from his addictions and the lifestyle that he found himself in. Alice was going up to play the first song. And 3 things were going through my mind at that point. The first thing that was going through is I could see the storm clouds coming from over the Eaton Center, from the west. There was supposed to be a giant thunderstorm. And all I could think of is, with all this electronic gear on the roof of the HMV store, what if I was responsible for the electrocution by death of Alice Cooper? I could never go back to Windsor, Detroit, where I grew up. I could never do that. I would be banned from that city and that place. The second thing that was going through my mind was, in fact, would I be arrested? Because I'm a believer that it's better to ask for forgiveness as opposed to asking for approval, and we never really got around to asking the city for a permit. Because we absolutely knew there's no way the city was going to give us a permit to have Alice Cooper play on the roof. But we did. We were always prepared. We had half of the security from the Rogers Center at that point, Skydome. We were sure of the security, and there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 10,000 fans closing Yonge Street. So I was thinking, this is going to be more than a ticket. I could actually be turning large stones into small stones in the Don jail pretty soon. That's the second thing that went through my mind. The third thing that went through my mind was, how in the heck did HMV get here? Because over a period of about 2 years, we had grown phenomenally from number 6 in the marketplace to number 2 in the marketplace. And we were up against very, very well-financed competitors. They had financial capital. They had superb human capital. They had brand capital, intellectual capital, technological capital. They had all other forms of capital. So what was fueling our success? If everybody had access to financial, human, intellectual, technological brand capital, what was it that was making HMV so successful? And in 1991, on the roof, it occurred to me that the thing that really set HMV apart from its competitors was the fact that we had enormous passion for music, and we also had enormous passion to win, but we also had a plan of putting that passion to work. Because passion by itself is never enough. Passion is the spark, but it is not the fire. So passion isn't enough. This idea of passion capital actually occurred without that specific name. Passion with a plan occurred to me in 1991. And I spent all that time collecting stories and thinking about success, thinking about the role of passion with a plan and being successful. I thought about that, and 3 years ago I started to write a book, and we gave away some copies of that book, and I just want to touch, because this is really an hour-long talk, I just want to touch on a few of the highlights of what passion capital is, how you can build and bring passion capital to your career, your cause, your company, and hopefully we can bring it, as Kevin Lynch talked about this morning, to our country. So what is passion capital? Passion capital is passion with a plan. It's the energy plus intensity plus sustainability that successful people, successful causes, and successful organizations all use to sustain their success over a period of time. Passion capital is the world's most valuable asset, and it is the key driver of success. It's more important than financial capital, human capital, intellectual capital, brand, and technological capital. Because if you have passion capital, as the way I describe it, you can acquire all those other forms of capital. It is the alpha form of capital, and it is the key driver of success. Now, the idea that you can acquire and invest passion capital like you acquire and invest any other asset is, for our sector, for the social enterprise, for the social profit, the not-for-profit sector, this is something that we have in abundance. And many of you in this room already know and understand and actually are great examples of what I call passion capitalists. You take your passion, you engage your community, you put that passion to work, you do it in a systematic and strategic way, and that's when you take passion, the emotion, and you transfer it into this incredibly valuable asset that actually, we heard Jennifer this morning, people take and go out and change small corners of the world. But how do you understand it and build it and invest it, just like an asset? Well, there's 7 building blocks, and I'm going to go through these very quickly. 7 building blocks of passion capital, and if you're interested, you can take a look at the book, or I'm going to be doing this talk in a lot more detail and a lot more specific for our sector at the AFP conference in November. But the first and the starting point and the most important building block of passion capital is creed. It goes creed, culture, courage, brand, resources, strategy, persistence. Those are the 7 building blocks. But the most important one is what you believe. A really clear and specific understanding of what you believe. Now, Matt, this morning when Matt came up, he put forward one slide that was really specific about what he believed for his foundation that he drives. That was a great example of a creed. A creed is a focused statement of beliefs. It is really the DNA of passion capital, and it states with clarity what you're all about. One of the most famous creeds in the world was written in 1943 by Robert Wood Johnson, the heir to the J&J empire. And he wrote what I think is still one of the best pieces of business writing ever. On one page, he said, this is what Johnson & Johnson believes. It's called the J&J Credo or Credo. And on one page, he wrote basically a story about what the company believed in, how it was going to invest, and how it was going to move forward. What's really interesting is the number one priority for the company were patients, doctors, and nurses. The second priority were the employees of the company. The third priority were the communities that it served. And the fourth priority in the J&J Credo, one of the best investments you could make over the last 25 years was the shareholder. The fourth priority in the J&J Credo, only 6 words have changed in 1943, was the shareholder. But he said, you know what, if we look after these first 3 groups properly, you're not going to have to worry as a shareholder. You're going to do really well. A great example of a creed in action. John D. Rockefeller Jr., if you go to Rockefeller Plaza, you'll see a fabulous example of a creed, a personal creed that's engraved in granite, Rockefeller Plaza. I'll urge you to, if you're in New York, to read it, because this is, again, a spectacular piece of narrative on what John D. Rockefeller Jr. believed in. You read that and you know exactly the moral compass that he followed. And last year when I had a chance to talk at this conference, I talked about the Princess Margaret Creed. It took us a year and a half to write that creed, and that has been fundamental. It's been transformational for us as an organization to put down on one page exactly what we believe. So creed is the first building block. The second building block, and Marty Parker, who is really the most learned person and the real expert on corporate culture, is going to be speaking next. Let me just say this about culture. Culture to me is your creed in action. What you believe, when you act on that, that becomes your culture. That becomes the way that you treat people. That becomes about your performance, your principles, your behavior. Think of it as the fertile soil where your beliefs take root. The third building block after creed and culture is courage. Now, how many of you have a performance appraisal that includes a section on courage in your performance appraisal? Anybody? Okay. I see one hand go up. You know what? I've been doing this talk in businesses and in business schools. Nobody has courage in their performance appraisal, and yet, as a leader, what is more important to innovation, to true leadership, to building a culture of performance and sustainability than having courage? And in our sector, you know, we are so inspired by the courageous acts of people, donors, volunteers around us. Courage just needs to be woven into our Passion Capital story. The fourth building block is brand. And Dave Kincaid talked very well and brilliantly about brand. Brand to me is your reputation you earn over time. It's your promise of performance. It's your unique proposition. And I have some stories that relate back to a meeting that I had with John Lasseter, who's the head of Pixar, was at Disney, was one of the leading animators at Disney, and was actually driven out of Disney. Said, "So long, John, time for you to go." Because he had this outrageous idea of using computers in animation. Yeah, really, think about that, outrageous. So Disney, with all their financial capital and brand capital and intellectual capital, they pushed John Lasseter out, and he met up with Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs put $20 million into a company. It became Pixar. When I worked for Disney, I had a meeting that John and Steve were both at for a whole day. They were absolutely delightful. The interesting thing was Steve Jobs talked about storytelling with great passion, and John Lasseter talked about technology. It wasn't the other way around. There was a great partnership where people, those two, brought their passion for animation, and they changed the whole industry of animation. And, you know, the most ironic Passion Capital story that I can think of is the fact that Steve Jobs parlayed his investment in Pixar, sold it back to Disney, became the largest shareholder in Disney. And who do you think is head of Disney Animation Studios? Yes, if you guessed John Lasseter, you're absolutely right. John is the head of Disney Animation because although he was pushed out, the way that he built his passion capital at Pixar, a remarkable and great story of being challenged, having the courage to follow your creed, your vision, and going forward. The fifth building block is about resources, assets that fuel growth, the right resources in the right place at the right time. These are the lifeblood of Passion Capital. The sixth building block is strategy. And strategy is about a plan to achieve specific goals. You know about that. You know, one of the things that we all do is SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat. What I would like to suggest to you, if you understand and you want to follow some of the learning behind how to build your passion into Passion Capital, is you do SWOT analysis. So you start with strengths, but instead of weaknesses, you talk about passion. Where are the lines of passion that go through your organization or your cause? And how do you find where the volunteers, where the donors, where that very specific point of passion, those points of passion intersect? And then take a look at the opportunities and threats. The brain of Passion Capital is strategy. Now, Kevin Lynch mentioned Dominic Barton, who's the Canadian who heads up the worldwide operation of McKinsey Consulting. Just a quick story here. Dominic Barton He's Canadian, small-town boy, went to McKinsey, was passed over once as partner, passed over twice as partner. Usually when you get passed over twice, it's so long, time for you to leave the company, right? The third time, he hung in, and he was made partner. And instead of pursuing his passion capital in Canada or the U.S., he went over to Korea. He went to Asia. And this was at a time when nobody was over there doing consulting. And his determination and his will to keep going paid off to the point where he has now been re-upped as a second term as the worldwide head of McKinsey Consulting. This was the guy who was passed over as partner a couple of times. And we'll finish on the seventh building block of passion capital, which is persistence. Persistence is the determination and the will to keep going towards something you believe in. You see how creed, or what you believe, when it comes to culture, when it comes to your brand, when it comes to courage, like your really specific statement of beliefs for your cause, for you, for your career. That one page that captures in real terms, not the plastic kind of speak of the vision statement that's plasticized and plugged in next to the coffee maker. I mean authentic, legitimate. How do you want to make a difference to the world? You're going to hear from Dr. Catherine Zahn in a minute. How has, there's been a transformation to me at CAMH. How has that transformation occurred? That transformation has come about because there is a really specific idea behind what we should be doing for mental health. And it's been swept under the carpet long enough. It's time to bring it out and talk about it. So persistence, having both the attitude, which is patience, and having the skill, which is imagination, that drives persistence. That is the seventh building block of passion capital. So just to wrap up, there are 7 building blocks of passion capital. Those building blocks are creed, what you believe, culture, courage, brand, resources, strategy, and persistence. Those 7 building blocks, when you take your passion, you take the passion of your volunteers, your donors, your community, you really clarify that passion into a creed, and then you take that forward with discipline and a strategy. That will help you create the world's most valuable asset. And that, to me, is passion capital. So, if you haven't found your passion, and I'm thinking about a lot of you who have university-age kids or younger, or even some of us, who are in your 40s or 50s. If you haven't found your passion, it's time to find it. If you've lost your passion, that's another way of saying you're burnt out. Because I work with people who work incredibly long hours and yet are so energized by their work. Right? Why is that? It's because they have extraordinary passion and they found their passion capital for their work. Many of us in our sector, I think, we get burnt out. And what is that about? We've lost our passion capital. If you've lost it, time to claim it again. And finally, if you know your passion, and most of you in this room do, time to use it, and use it more effectively. If you do that, you will become what I call a passion capitalist. So, put your passion capital to work. I invite you to celebrate your success, because one of the great outcomes of succeeding is being able to celebrate it, and the other great outcome is sharing it with others who need it. That's why I think passion capital is all about success, your success for your career, your cause, your company, your country, and it is, in fact, the world's most valuable asset. Thank you.